I'm really excited to be here tonight and to continue with this series of the Proverbs 31 woman. A woman that we like to poke fun at a little bit. A woman that probably really was misunderstood a little bit. But tonight I'm hoping to get to the very core of who she really was. And more importantly, whose she was. And how that made all the difference in her family. So I'm going to be talking about the Proverbs 31 woman and her family, but I want to say this. If you are single, widowed, divorced, or empty nested, listen up because this message is for you too. Because you know in verse 28 where it says, her children rise up and call her blessed. Do you know that the word in the Hebrew there is her people? That's the actual translation is her people. So it's not just children that she gave birth to, but her people. And every one of us in here have some people, right? We have families, we have people we work with, we have neighbors, we have church friends, we have people. So tonight we're going to look at what was it about her that her people rose up and stood up and called this woman blessed. And her husband also. What was it about her? I thought that I would start off by introducing you to my people. So if you look on the screen, there's a picture of my family. We are a blended family. And my husband and I both went through unwanted divorces and have been remarried to each other for 33 years now. So that's 231 years in dog years. If you're in a blended family, you got to make it count. Count it in dog years because it's super hard, and God bless you with that family. So he had the girls and I had the boys, and they were kindergarten to the same age, a boy and a girl, first grade and third grade when we said, I do. Now they're all married, my people, and they're walking with Jesus. And they have given us 11 grandchildren, which includes one who's waiting for us in heaven. So I certainly don't have the answers for you all on marriage, family, or anything like that. But one I want to share with you tonight is something that I'm actually pretty passionate about that has to do with the core of who we are as women. And the core of who really the Proverbs 31 woman was and how that holds out to us an example. So let's start with her people. Okay, so she obviously, it says in Proverbs 31 that she had a husband. It said that she had children, and she also had some helpers, although in my Bible it called them servant girls. And I would just like to say, if I had some servant girls, I would be so happy to be kind to them as well. But the whole bottom line is that she was the mother or the matriarch or the female of her group of people. And that is really important. So first I want to say something in beginning to you that are mothers today of any kind. Mothers, grandmothers, you are so important. And actually, the legacy that you leave and how you impact your people's life and your children's life is so important. A few years ago, I had the privilege of writing this book called It's Momplicated with a Christian therapist, and it's about healing of wounds that we may have experienced in childhood. But there's a poem that we started with, and I wanted to start tonight reading it to you. It's titled, Your Mother. I don't know who wrote this. It was just a poem we found on the internet. Your mother is always with you. She's the whisper of the leaves as you walk down the street. She's the smell of bleach in your fresh laundered socks. She's the cool hand on your brow when you're not well. Your mother lives inside your laughter, and she's crystallized in every teardrop. She's the place that you came from, your first home. She's the map you follow with every step you take. She's your first love, and she's your first heartbreak. And nothing on earth can separate you, not time, not space, not death. Our mothers are always with us. You see, God gave women a very important role in the scheme of things. And whether you're actually a birth mother or not is not the point. The point being is every one of us are daughters. Every one of us are women. And God gave us a very important place. We can learn a lot from the Proverbs 31 woman. But I think it's really interesting that it starts out, Proverbs 31 starts with, King Lemuel's mother giving him some instruction, but it starts out with that women were of not much use, really. In fact, they will ruin you and you can't trust them. That's where she started. Proverbs 31:3 says, "Do not spend your strength on a woman, your vigor on those who ruin kings." But we're going to go from a woman who ruins to a woman who restores. Because it says in Proverbs 31 verse 10 that a wife of noble character, who can find, she is worth more than rubies. And Lenya did a beautiful job teaching on that last week. So I want to stick tonight with the things that she did and how that's not who she was. Many years ago, there was a book that was titled, "Help Me, I'm Being Held Captive," by the Proverbs 31 woman. And we could all laugh at that because we know the amount of pressure and stress and guilt that gets triggered when we look at this list of things that she did. And it can breed in us insecurity or a tendency to think we have to perform as women, or a tendency to think that we have to be more perfect as women. And all of this is a trap. And sadly, as women, we have it a little harder as Christian women. I'm just going to tell you, because we have two standards that we try to live up to. We don't speak about these standards. We don't actually have a list of these standards, but these standards live on in our lives as Christian women. First of all, we have the cultural standard, the same thing that every woman out there is living up to. I call these two women the Bettys, so meet the Bettys. There's Betty Beautiful. She's the cultural standard. She's beautiful, she's successful, she's educated. She's a mix of Joanna Gaines, Mother Teresa, and Wonder Woman. She looks like a supermodel. She owns a luxury car and wears designer fashions. She never has a bad hair day or a bad home day. She never gains a pound, and she has her own personal trainer. She's forever sexy, slim, and stunning. She never grows old. No hot flashes, whiskers, or thinning hair for her, and no mental pause. This is the unspoken image of who we think we need to be, the magazine ads, the women in the movies, what we see all around us. But so we have that because we live in this world, but then we have the unspoken Christian standard that reigns in the church. She is everything that Betty Beautiful is, and then some. She's the perfect balance of Mary, Martha, and the Proverbs 31 woman. She leaps tall trials with a single bound. She rises while it's still dark to read her Bible. She never has a bad hair day, a bad home day, or a worn-out faith day. She serves the church, the community, and the mission field. Her children are well-behaved. They never rebel or fight. No, not her kids. And they always praise her. She never has a hot flash. She never has an extra pound. And she never has a wrinkled outfit. She never misses the opportunity to bless someone or to shoot up a prayer to heaven. She is the dictionary definition of perfect or blessed. And that's what's going to happen to us if we only focus on what the Proverbs 31 woman did instead of who she was. There is a saying, home is where your story began. So who she was, not what she did, who she was is what impacted her people and her family. You see, all of us from a very young age learn things. Things are imprinted upon our brains and into our hearts from where we have come from. And the important people in our life leave this thing called imprints. They may stay or go in the physical realm, but they're always there in our heart. Because you see, these people helped form our hearts, and there's no getting over that. So what are these imprints? Imprints are the programming, the mark someone leaves on another person, good, bad, and everything in between. And our early experiences sear patterns into our souls as powerfully as a hot branding iron. These patterns can influence us and later our own children or our own people throughout life. In writing It's Complicated, we would get together every Wednesday for this co-write, and she was the researcher. And she would bring all of this research about how children are impacted by who raises them. I personally did not have good programming or good mentoring. And so I have had to come to Jesus for healing as an adult woman. The best way that I can explain it in a nutshell so that maybe you would understand is I'll sum it all up to my cold, critical mother. I'll sum it up till when I was 17. When I was 17 years old, I was voted homecoming queen of my high school. A ridiculous thing to be talking about at my age, but it's my story, so bear with me. When I was receiving that crown under the Friday night lights out on the football field, it was a really big deal back then, and I wasn't like the normal 17-year-old who was thinking I was cool. I was thinking my mother will finally be proud of me. She was in the stands with my father. I couldn't wait to get home from the homecoming dance and show her my tiara because I knew this was the ticket. This was it. I mean, after all, I was already a straight A student. I was knocking myself out to do everything to earn her love, affection, and attention. So maybe this was it. But when I got home, she was asleep. So I took my little tiara off and I put it on the nightstand next to me and went to sleep, probably dreaming visions of homecoming. I don't know. But when I woke up in the morning, I got my little tiara. I went into the room where she was drinking her coffee and reading the newspaper, and I twirled around like a 17-year-old might, and I said, "Look, Mom, I'm the queen." And she said, "They must have miscounted the votes." You see, I knew it at the young age of 17 that I would never be enough, that my own mother, if given the chance, would not have voted for me. My mother wasn't real great at verse 27 and 28, where it says, she watches over the affairs of her household, does not eat the bread of idleness, and her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband praises her. I was not raised in a Christian home. My mother, I learned later, did the best she could with what she had. Because you see, my mother never wanted me. But instead of aborting me, she decided to keep me. She made a vow to God. Really, she was a strong, devout Catholic woman, and went to see a priest when I was 6 months old and expressed to the priest that she had never wanted this child. And the priest basically said, "Well, she's yours." And so my mother made a vow to God that she would provide for me everything I physically needed, but that I could never have her heart. And they agreed together on that day. And my mother kept that promise my entire life. She would never let me have her heart. But you see, women can go from women who ruin to women who restore. Because my mother eventually accepted Jesus. And my whole family was saved. In fact, back in the 70s, in the whole Jesus revolution. And my whole family was saved. And my mother went from a woman who caused ruin to a woman who caused restoration. You see here where it says she watches over the affairs of her household. Watches means she looks out for, to keep watch, to observe, to watch closely. So in your households or with your people, this is the part that's the example, because we're going to get to, there's something behind this. There's some core of who she was that caused her to be a woman who looked out for her people. who kept watch over her people, who observed them. And let me say another thing right in here. Moms, aunts, grandmas, stepmothers, whatever. Nobody will pray like your people like you will pray for your people. Keep watch. Observe their lives. You don't have to control their lives, criticize their lives, or fix their lives, but you can keep watch, and you can go before the Father as a woman who is not bringing ruin, but instead bringing restoration, and asking Jesus to touch those things that you see that they may need some help with. Where it says she watches over the affairs, it means the going, the doing, the traveling, the walking. She was in touch with her people. And of course, her children were her children, her grandchildren, her people, or her relationships in the Hebrew. And they rose up, meaning to stand. They stood up around her to bless her. What kind of woman is this? This is a woman who persisted. You know, we like to think that things are so hard these days, and they are. They are. It is not easy raising kids these days. Right now, we have our son and his wife and their 3 children living with us in our basement. And they've been with us because they're having a house being built, but because of the, supply chain problems and all of that, this house being built has been going on forever, almost 2 years. They're moving in 3 weeks. But the reason I'm telling you this is because I am super aware of how hard it is to raise children these days. The fighting, the crying, the struggle over media, the struggle over Nintendo, the crying, not wanting to go to school, the whole thing. I see it up close and personal every single day in my own world right now. And I know it's hard. But I'm going to tell you something, it's always been hard. Yeah. It was different for the Proverbs 31 woman, but her life was not easy. Nothing was easy back then. Well, we could laugh that she had servants or helpers. Well, you know what? She needed them. She was doing a lot of stuff. The Proverbs 31 woman was good to her husband. She was a hard worker. She was a seamstress. She rose early. She provided food for her family, clothes and safety for her family. Took care of those servant girls. She was an entrepreneur, planted a vineyard, strong and profitable, opened her arms to the poor, and she dressed like royalty. This woman, it says she was clothed, as if it weren't enough. Now we got to hear what she looked like. She was clothed in fine linen in purple. And fine linen in purple was how royalty dressed. She wore royal clothing. She was dressed to the nines. She was Princess Diana way before Princess Diana. She had it going on. But let's not get stuck there, because 3 verses later, it says that she is clothed in strength and dignity, and she can laugh at the days to come. So one was her outer clothing, fine linen and purple. The other was her inner clothing, the character of who she was. She wore strength and dignity like a robe. Inward clothing is imperishable. 1 Peter 3 says this: your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair and the wearing of gold jewelry and fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past, such as the Proverbs 31 woman, put their hope in God and made themselves beautiful. She was beautiful and valuable and blessed, not because of what she did, but because of who she was. And how could she be that kind of woman with strength and dignity? It says she laughed at the days to come. King James says she rejoiced over the future. The Message said she smiled at the future. The Amplified said strength and dignity are her clothing and her position is strong and secure. And let me ask you this, what kind of woman could laugh at her future, smile at her future? Because here's the deal, we don't know what our future is going to bring us. None of us do. I'm an older woman now, and I've gone through a lot of things. Things that I never thought or anticipated that I would go through in my life. But God has always been faithful. And even now at my age, I am tempted to not laugh at my future, but to worry about my future. What happens as I age? What happens if I lose my husband? What happens as my kids are completely grown and I feel like I don't have the same purpose I had as a younger woman? But God says no. You see, when you are clothed with strength, inner strength, that only comes from the Father by trusting who He is. You see, this is what we need. We need to trust who He is and how He loves us. I want to say that again. We all need to trust who He is and how He loves us. And when we do that, we can be like her in smiling at the future, even though we do not know what the future will bring. She knew who she was. She knew who she was. This foundational security impacted her family and her people. This foundational security was passed on. And we too can leave a legacy of this kind of security. I mean, who needs to leave a legacy of a list of chores that we completed? I mean, I'm not interested. What about you? I don't care about that. Who needs to leave a legacy of how we were beautiful on the outside? Well, maybe for a minute. No, I mean, who really needs to leave that kind of legacy? Nobody. But when I'm gone, I want my children to say, my mother was not perfect, but she trusted God. My mother had fears, but she just kept pushing past them. My mother got old, but she never quit serving. This is a kind of legacy I want to leave for my children and for my grandchildren. You see, it's all about what defines us, because what defines us is what's going to drive us. To define means to outline clearly what something is, to make distinct and clear who we are. To define, it compels us into action. It causes us to move in a certain direction. So if I am defined by that I belong to the Most High God, that I was created by Him and for Him, to love Him and love others. When I am defined by not only was I created by Him and for Him, but in Him I'm being held together no matter what my age is. When that defines me, then that's what will drive my life. That's what will help me be persistent and keep pushing forward like this Proverbs 31 woman. I'll tell you a little secret. I grew up in the whole culture of Los Angeles, and my father worked for celebrities, and I honestly thought growing up as a little girl that a woman's place was to be pretty, perfect, and polished. I mean, women didn't do much else back then except just look really good and parade around and be, Miss America or whatever. I don't know. I really thought that was it. But then I accepted Jesus. And I never canceled out that belief. I brought that into my Christian walk with me, but I just added Jesus on top of it. So here I walk into my Christian journey, and I think I still need to be pretty, perfect, and polished. But now for Jesus, of course, it's all a lie. You see, God doesn't care about those 3 Ps. They're cultural, and they fade with time. We're not always going to be, if you're beautiful in here, you're not always going to be beautiful. You're not always going to be pretty, perfect, and polished. And if your skin is so tight, God bless you, but it's not always going to be. Someday you're going to look in the mirror like me and you're going to go, why do I have these lines? I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. God's P's are three different things: position, passion, and purpose. Position, who am I and what is the truth about me? What defines me? Because when I know that, then I can move in my life with passion. It will compel me. It will move me. It will drive me. And then I will have purpose. What am I living for? Why do I exist? There was also something that I never knew, and nobody ever sat down and told me. It took my life falling apart for God to tell me. But I never knew that I was his. That sounds ridiculous, right? I accepted Jesus. I literally went to church probably 4 nights a week. I was in a Christian rock band and traveled the whole United States. But I did not know that I was his. You see, I was on the wheel. I was on the same wheel I had already been on, but now I just had Jesus with me on the wheel. And it wasn't Jesus, take the wheel. It's like, Jesus, help me on this wheel. I got to be better. I got to try harder. But I tried as hard as I could. And my life fell apart after 13 years of marriage to a senior pastor of a large church. My husband, the father of my 2 children, just wasn't in love anymore and left us. And my life crashed and burned. But what happened next was this. I said to Jesus, if this man doesn't love me, I'm not sure you love me. If I'm not his wife, I'm not sure I have purpose. If I'm not the pastor's wife, I'm not sure I have calling or ministry. I don't know who I am anymore. And God tenderly began showing me his love for me in a way that I never knew it before. And more importantly, he began to solidify my identity as being his. All of a sudden, I saw all these scriptures everywhere that we are identified as his, that we are his people, that we are his treasured possession, his, and I needed to reprogram my thinking. And so I had my very first cell phone, and I put it in there. When you would turn it on, it said his. I did all these crazy things to remind me, because I so easily would forget. I might not have been anybody's wife anymore, but I was his. Amen. And that was more important than anything. I went as far as, I hardly ever wear this, but I wore it today on purpose. I have this little bracelet, kind of a Tiffany-style bracelet. And years ago, I bought it, and I took it to a jeweler's, and I said I wanted his engraved on one side, in 1973 engraved on the back side. That isn't when I was born, it's when I accepted Jesus. And when I went to go at the jeweler's, the lady, she got it out, and she was shining the silver, and she put it out on a little velvet towel or whatever they call them, and she said, "Oh, this is so precious. Is this the year that you met your husband?" And I said, "No, it's the year that I met Jesus as my Lord." She goes, "Okay, now, bye-bye, bye-bye. You have a nice day." And I wore his bracelet all the time for many years. In fact, if you were to look at it up close, you could barely see the his and the date etched in it, but it's still there. I wore it on airplanes because I was afraid to fly, and I would hold on to it, and I would tell myself, I am his, I am his, I am his. I would wear it into work meetings when I felt insecure or incompetent, and I would tell myself, I am his, I am his, I am his. Now, this isn't a positive, this isn't a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I was repeating the biblical truth of God's word to my own heart. The truest thing about you is not what you do. The truest thing about you is who you are, and that is the thing you can offer your people. Because of who you are, you're different. You see, our children need 4 key things, and there are 4 key things that we always needed too. That was part of the research that came from this book. There literally are 4 defined things that every child needs. They need presence, safety, leadership, and affirmation to be celebrated. And you see, these are all things that God has given us, every single one of them. Presence. He's given us his presence. He says, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you in Hebrews 13:5. It says in Matthew 1:23, they will call him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. He has given us himself in his presence. Moms, listen up. Grandmas, listen up. Friends, listen up. Your people, they need you to be present. We forget about it. It's hard now. It's harder than ever. A few weeks ago, I had these kids that I told you that live in my basement. I take them to the park quite often. There's a park about a block and a half from our house, and we walk down to the park, and we lug the sand toys and everything. I give their mom a break, and they just play, and usually, truth be told, they play while I'm on my phone. Now, I tell myself it's okay because I'm on my phone, I'm checking emails, I'm doing work, I'm getting stuff done. And they're getting stuff done. They're making sand pies and all kinds of stuff. But one day, I forgot my phone. I thought, I should just run back, just dart back in the house really quick and get my phone. But I thought, no, I'm not going to get my phone. I went to the park with them with no phone. At first, it felt really uncomfortable because guess what? I had to be present. But let me tell you what happened. When these children discovered I didn't have my phone, they changed. When these children discovered that I was watching them and paying attention to them, something in them came alive. My little 5-year-old grandson started running around like Sonic the Hedgehog, and he goes, Grammy, look at me. Do you think I'm fast? I'm so fast. Look at me, Grammy. And then my granddaughter said, Grammy, will you come make sand food with us? We're going to have a sand restaurant. And I went along with it all. And they were so happy. Because you see, all of us, not just children, deserve people to be present with them. I believe the Proverbs 31 woman, no matter how many things she did, because she watched well over the ways of her household, she was there for her people, so that meant she had to be present. To observe them, she had to be present. And God was present with us too. The next thing that our people need is safety. And God gives us safety. It says in Psalm 3:3, you, O Lord, are a shield around me. And God, it says in Psalm 139, he hems us behind and before, and he lays his hand upon us. We are kept by God. And our people need to know that they are safe with us. This means we need to evaluate how we talk about them to other people. This means we need to evaluate what we talk about in front of them. They need to be safe with us. Our kids had some friends over playing, and one of the little girls said to me, she goes, your neighbors are just terrible people. This is like a 9-year-old girl, and I go, they are? And she said, yes. I go, do you know them? Oh, she goes, no, but my mom said they're terrible. I go, oh, why did she say that? Oh, because they didn't say hello to her and they weren't friendly when she pulled up in the driveway. My mom says they're just terrible. They're terrible people. And when she said that, we can laugh, but I want us not to laugh for a minute and think of this. Our people need to find safety in us, and we need to be careful what we say about other people. We need to be careful if they hear us gossiping, if they hear us being ugly, they will pick up on it and they will think this is normal. Okay, newsflash, those of you that are stepmothers or those of you that are in blended families, please hear this. Your children watch every single thing you do, mom and stepmom. And those children deserve to be safe in your presence. They deserve to be able to love both parents and both families and be safe in your presence. Is it easy? Maybe not. A lot of things aren't easy. I bet the Proverbs 31 woman's life wasn't easy. And then the next thing we need is we need somebody that will lead us. And our children, our people need that. It says in Psalm 32, it says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you should go, and I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. What are you doing to lead your people? Whether it's at work, whether it's in your home, whether it's in your more extended family, are we just going along with everything? Are we being brave enough to lead? And that doesn't mean brave enough to control. That means brave enough to walk out in love who we are and whose we are. And then the last thing that they need is to be celebrated. And God celebrates us. Deuteronomy 7:6, you are a holy people who belong to the Lord your God. Of all the people on earth, the Lord your God has chosen you to be his own special treasure. You are a holy woman. You belong to the Lord your God, and he has chosen you, just you. Don't think about this whole crowd of women, just you. He has chosen you to be his treasured possession. Possession is a word in the Hebrew that means something carefully acquired and carefully maintained. That's how God watches over you. But if we are going to be to our people something that will be life-giving, a woman not that ruins, but a woman that brings restoration, we need to be brave enough to find the healing we need for ourselves. So when I talk about those 4 things that every person needs, if you first have not received those yourself somewhere along the way, then I'm encouraging you to find the help that you need, because the best thing we can do as a woman to find the healing that we need for ourselves. And with that healing, we have our oxygen mask on first, and we pass on healing to others. Now, this all can sound like a lot, but I want to end it with this. I learned something really valuable ago with a little hamster named Jif. I told my son when that he could not have a hamster for his birthday. We did not do rodents of any kind in our house. Now, I know they're not rodents, but to me, hamster, rat, rodent, same thing. No hamster. But a dear sweet relative named Grandma took him to the pet store and got him the only thing his little heart desired. Now, I'm a grandma, so I get it now. Because he loved that little hamster so much, I let him keep Jif. But there's a problem when they have animals. They say they'll take care of them, and they don't. And there's a problem with hamsters. They run on a wheel all night long. These days, they have the hamster habitat. It says whisper soft operation. When we had Jif, we had the squeaky wheel. So I had my stepdaughters in one room. I had my sons in one room with Jif. That's where he lived, in the cage. My husband and I were down the hall, and Grandma lived with us at that time, and she was downstairs, and everybody's sleeping quietly except me. All I can hear is that wheel all night long. I toss and turn and think maybe it'll be better tomorrow. The next night, same thing. My kids are wondering that next morning why I'm so cranky. You know that saying, Mama ain't happy? Nobody's happy. Third day, 1 o'clock in the morning, I got up, threw my robe on, marched down to the room where Jif was living. I opened the door. My kids were still sound asleep. There was a privacy towel on the cage, and there was a sign over the cage that said, Home Sweet Home Jif. Isn't that precious? But he was keeping me awake for 3 nights, so I did what any mother would do. I got eye to eye with Jif. I ripped that privacy towel off, and I got eye to eye with him, and I said, look, buddy, where are you going? You're running. You can't get out of the cage. You're not going anywhere. And the more I talked to him, the faster he ran. I thought of throwing him out the window. We were upstairs. But I couldn't do that. I thought of flushing him down the toilet, but I'm not that evil of a mommy. But instead, I went back to my bedroom. Everybody's still asleep. I pulled the covers over my head and I began to cry. Snot, crying, cry. and pray. I said, Jesus, I hate this hamster. And he spoke to my heart and he said, you're just like Jiff. That's not very nice. You were like Jiff because you run. And you run on this wheel. Got to be better. Got to try harder. Got to do more. Better mom. Better wife. Better daughter. Better friend. Better servant. Better, 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 better. And you are exhausted. Officially exhausted. You're fighting with a hamster. And here was my defining moment. And this is what I want to leave you with. It was at that point that I, not audibly, but in my heart of hearts, heard Jesus give me that invitation once again. Come to me, Debbie. You are weary, you are burdened, and you are heavy laden, and I am inviting you into a life of rest. And that night, under my covers, with snot and tears, I realized something. To come to Jesus is more than a Sunday school verse. To come to Jesus is a directional change. So maybe some of us in this room, we're at the beginning of a fresh new year. Maybe we need a directional change. The Proverbs 31 woman is inspiring in that her people rise up and call her blessed, and every one of us would love that, wouldn't we? Yeah. But maybe we need a directional change. Can you hear him calling? Yeah. He's saying, come on, honey, I know you're tired. Come on, I know about your marriage. Come on, I know about your disappointment. Come on, I know you're depressed. Come on, I know you don't feel like you have friends. Come on, I know that you think this Christian thing you're not even so sure about. Come on, I know. Just come to me and I will take care of you. So good. And that is how the Proverbs 31 woman could laugh at the days to come. She knew who she was. She knew whose she was. And she undoubtedly went to him. And I pray that we do that as well. God bless you.